Shalom, hello, and welcome to another Torah Parsha. And in today's lesson, we are going to be beginning with the Book of Bamidbar. So this is the first Parsha in the Book of Numbers, which is titled Bamidbar, for which the book is titled as well in the Hebrew. But for most people, they will know this as the Book of Numbers. Now, of course, this Parsha goes from the beginning, chapter 1, verse 1, all the way through to chapter 4, verse 20. And so I'd like to start out by pointing out something very interesting that the Baal HaTurim points out to us in his commentary on Bamidbar. So he points out to us, and let's go to the next slide, talking about the first part of this verse, where we see this word here, Bamidbar Sinai, which we translate here as in the wilderness of Sinai. So this is at Mount Sinai. So the Baal HaTurim opens his commentary by saying this. In the preceding verse, which is in the book of Vayikra, chapter 27, verse 34, the Torah states, these are the commandments, so Elei ha-mitzvot. And juxtaposed to this is Bamidbar, in the wilderness. So this indicates that if a person does not make himself like a wilderness, he will not be able to know Torah and mitzvot. This is a very interesting statement. What does it mean? I think we need to sort of delve into this and ask ourselves, what does it mean to be able to learn? I think this is what this is speaking to the heart of. So this insight comes from the Midrash, Bamidbar and Rabbah 1:7, where it says, whoever does not make himself hefkar, free to all like the wilderness, will not be able to acquire wisdom and Torah. So now, interestingly, this term, hefkir, means to make oneself ownerless. So this is looking at the notes on this particular midrash. And let me just quickly read what it says. So the commentators offer various interpretations as to what our midrash means by making oneself ownerless, hefker. Some say it means being humble, ready and willing to learn from anyone and to teach anyone. Others say it refers to pursuing Torah with such single-mindedness that one disregards one's physical and material needs. So just back to my notes, the term hefkar, so this is a different, same letters, so letter hey, pei, kuf, resh, but with different vowels. The term hefkar refers to a modest willingness to both learn from anybody, even to one's own, even from a person whose general knowledge is inferior to one's own, and to teach what one knows to anybody who desires to learn. So this is I think, a very poignant and interesting insight of what the Baal HaTurim here is talking about. Whoever does not make himself hefkar, free to all, like the wilderness, will not be able to acquire wisdom and Torah. So it is also suggested that alternatively, making oneself hefker means making one's knowledge free to all, that is, teaching without charging and making it free, without charging or a fee. So that's a Rashi talking or speaking about the Talmud here, commenting on Nedarim 55a. So to further develop this idea, we can also look at the Mishnah. Okay, so the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot 4:1, where it says this, and this is quite interesting because there's a really good commentary on this as well by the Maharal. So coming into the Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, for one, it says this: Ben Zoma says, "Who is wise?" Question: He who learns from every person, as it is said in Tehillim, the book of Psalms, Psalm 190. Gosh, my favorite psalm, verse 99. From all my teachers I grew strong. Now, there is a very good commentary on this that I want to read to you as well. And again, why do we do this? Why do we go out of our way to look at these commentaries? Again, why is this called Voices of Torah? Because what are we doing? We are looking to listen to other people's discussions as well, because that's the discussion. When we come into the discussion, what are we able to do? We are able to add our voices to the discussion. We're able to bring our questions into the discussion. And this is the wonderful thing that we are finding here in these commentaries at the beginning of the Book of Bamidbar. What does it mean to learn? How do we realize the potential, and how do we facilitate that potential to be realized in our capacity to learn? And what they're saying here, you need to make yourself like the wilderness. And again, this is incredible, but coming back to what is going on here. So the Maharal, in his commentary on this, looks at this first part of this Mishnah. Who is wise? He who learns from every person. So we might expect the answer to who is wise to be he who has learned much Torah. However, knowledge is just an acquisition. The true indication of a wise person is that he searches for knowledge. So the author of this particular Mishnah, Ben Zoma, the Maharal goes on to say, Ben Zoma tells us how to accurately appraise a person's soul and avoid being misled by external measures of success. So he goes on to comment on he who learns from every person. He who is wise by his very nature yearns for knowledge wherever he may find it. He can learn from anyone because desire for wisdom is in the very fabric of his being. What do we call this? Someone who has an inquisitive heart, an inquisitive mind. What are they doing? They're always asking questions. And what is the wonderful nature of a question? Question facilitates discussion. Discussion facilitates debate. Debate is the very nature of us wrestling together to find common grounds where we can begin to share our viewpoints. And I love how this is doing this. So, is a successful student a product of his own abilities or of the teacher's skill? Great question. When two people are involved, the student and the teacher, we do not know if we are observing the wisdom of the student or the expertise of the teacher. When we observe that a student learns from every teacher he comes in contact with, it is perfectly clear that the student's success is the result of his own efforts. And he goes on to continuing commenting on he who learns from every person. We explained before that knowledge is acquired. It is not the essence of a person, and yet the loving pursuit of knowledge enriches the soul itself. The analogy is an athlete who lifts weights to be strong. As he shoulders heavy weights, his muscles develop and strengthen. So too the wise person desires the perfection that Torah wisdom can impart. As he internalizes knowledge, he strengthens and enriches his very being. And this really speaks to the heart of why I have come to value the Torah so much, because the way it changes us, the way it not just changes but develops us, facilitates the process of our capacity to observe what we are looking at. And that observation leads us towards greater discussion about what we are observing. Again, the questions, our ability to discuss, have conversation, have our voice come into this, what we could call it, the amazing song of humanity, learning how to describe, give voice to the wonder of who God is. So too, the wise person desires the perfection that Torah wisdom can impart. And again, David HaMelech speaks about this so succinctly in the book of Tehillim. So as he internalizes knowledge, he strengthens and enriches his very being. So academic knowledge that does not lead to action does not stimulate personal growth, just as merely owning weights does not build a strong body. So in short, if you desire knowledge in the hope that it will mold you into a better person, then you are truly wise. I love this. And so he continues on, from all my teachers I grew wise. How does this verse prove that a wise person seeks out wisdom? In earlier times, one had only a few teachers throughout life. The reason that a wise person has many teachers is that he searches for Torah from everyone who has something to teach. His passion for Torah seeks Torah at every turn. In summary, the truly wise person yearns for knowledge in a way that enhances his very being. And I think this is quite a remarkable insight, really, into what it takes to truly learn about the ways of God. We can't do it in isolation. And the Torah itself, and I've talked about this before, the way it facilitates relationship is just remarkable. It's incredible. How we build ourselves individually, because we are built within the family and within the community, because we start to believe in the importance of who we are and the importance of our voice. This is so encouraging to me, and I think this should encourage everybody as well, because it's our capacity to share what we are learning as well. Quite remarkable. So I thought this was a wonderful insight, that the Baal HaTurim here sparks a marvelous discussion, a marvelous debate. And as you will see, as we go on into this parsha in the Book of Bamidbar, what I want to talk about next, the realization that we need to have of how we contribute individually in our voices, by bringing our voice to the discussion of who God is to us and our journey, and allowing our voice to become a part of a greater discussion because we desire to hear other people's voices. But I think this is something remarkable, and something that's really changed me a lot, encouraged me a lot, is realizing just how precious we are on an individual level to God, and what he does here at the beginning of Bamidbar to make us realize that, and delve into and dig into what is really going on here. Because you can ask this question, why in the English is it called Numbers? Why is this called the Book of Numbers? So that's a very simple thing, because it begins with a census, it begins with a count. But why does God do that? Why is it so important for God to record the fact that he wants to number the people? Seems very arbitrary. And on the surface, you would say that doesn't really have much of a spiritual lesson. But as we will see, because we know this with the Torah, we know this with his word, and why this is the kiss of the heaven and so delicious to us, that all we need to do is just allow our hearts to observe the language here and begin to ask the questions, why is this important to you, God? And then what does it do? It speaks back to us and shows us some amazing things. All right, so coming back to the text. So we've looked at Bamidbar Sinai. So this sets the scene of where we are. We're in the Bnei Israel are in the wilderness of Sinai. They've been there for a little while. So Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. So God speaks to Moshe, Bamidbar, in the wilderness of Sinai. Be'ochel moed be'echad lechodesh. So at the first day of the second month, and it goes on to talk about the second year, after they had come out of Mitzrayim, and says to him. So this is where we get this issue of the census here in verse 2. But the language, again, the language he's using here, we need to stop and look at it very carefully. So what does he say here? It says, She'u et rosh. So, She'u et rosh, which is translated as take a census. Now, all right, the first thing we need to realize is in the mechanics of the language here, and that is that this first word here, She'u, comes from this verb here, nashar, which means to carry, to lift, to raise up. So literally, he is saying lift up the heads, lift up the heads of coal. So now this is always an important word because it gives us the context of all adat, so all of the congregation of the Bnei Yisrael. Now again, they've just translated it as people. Don't know why, but it's Bnei, all of the sons or the children of Yisrael. According to their Lemish Pechotam, so according to their clans, Levites, or the houses of their Avotam, of their fathers, Bamispar Shamot Kol Zachar Legul Gilotam. So according to the number of the names of every male Hebrew head. So who's being counted here? The men are being counted here. And of course in verse 3 it goes on to describe exactly who is being counted here as well, based on age. So from the year of 20 years up, all in Israel who are able to go to war. So this is why it's specifically talking about men, and Aaron shall list them company by company. Okay, so, but the most interesting thing, of course, here, as you will now be realizing, so they say take a census, but it actually in the Hebrew, lift up, raise up, carry, lift, raise up, et rosh, the heads of all the congregation of Bnei Yisrael. So what is going on here? So in the English, of course, this is translated as take a sentence. However, Hashem is actually using this term, as Rambam and Rashi point out, as an expression of greatness. Interesting. So lift up the heads of all the congregation of the Bnei Yisrael. So this is an amazing imperative declaration. And so why do I say imperative? Because this word here is actually a command. It's an imperative. It is a second masculine plural. So he's saying to Moshe, saying, I want you to lift up all of these people. Okay, and as a command. So this is an amazing imperative declaration by Hashem that states that every one of these people is to be considered to be on a level of greatness. So this is what we can learn by looking at what Rashi and Rambam have to say here. So their position is never to be considered as ordinary or mundane. And the role of leadership is to lift them up to a high place. After all, they are all a part of a a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, coming back to one of the most amazing texts that we find again in the book of Exodus in Shemot 19:6. What a mamlechet kohanim. Such grand language. So everyone who was to be counted would be an individual, acknowledged as having greatness in the eyes of Hashem. That you shall count them. Now, I want to show you something very interesting as well that's happening here in the Hebrew text that it's completely missed out in the English. Now, I don't know why they've done this, but because they've done this, something incredibly is being missed here. And I want to point this out to you because when we read verse 3, so in verse 3 in the English, it's very obvious. From 20 years old and upward, all in Israel who are able to go to war, you and Aaron shall list them company by company. Now, what happens here is list them is actually this phrase here, tifkedu otam. And what's going on here as well is that in here we have this root pakad, okay? So literally it should be, you shall count them. Let's fix that spelling mistake. You shall count them. All right. So this presents a fascinating idea as Rambam attributes the idea of Pekida is a remembering and a turning of attention to something or someone. So he's talking about what's happening with this, the root of this word here. So this is this bit here, Pekada. And whenever you go into the dictionaries on this word, they've got a lot to say about this particular root. So pakad, the basic meaning of this word is disputed. Okay, it's disputed, but to make a careful inspection. Now, the interesting thing here is that Rambam attributes the idea of pakida to be remembering, to bring someone into remembrance so they can have their capacity to turn their attention to something or someone. And the reason he does this is because the word pakad turns up in a very interesting place, okay, in the book of Genesis. So let's quickly let's bring this up on screen. So the interesting place that this turns up, this word pakad, and you'll see it here in Bereshit 21:1 here, so where it says V'Hashem pakad et Sarah, and so they translate this, of course, in English. The Lord visited Sarah, but the Rambam delves into this, into saying it's to be remembered as an act of turning of the attention to something or someone. So Rambam is what he's doing here is quite genius, actually, and saying that when Hashem says to them, Tifkedu otam, you shall count them, he's saying in the act of lifting them up, the act of lifting up an individual, the act of lifting up someone as an individual. In other words, when you count them, you look them in the face, you acknowledge them. And this is the heart of what is going on here. You don't just count them as a group of numbers and put it all together, say this is how many people here. He's saying, look at everybody individually in the face. Lift their heads up so that the process of doing that allows them to come back into the power of remembrance. They start to remember or know the potential of who they are as an individual, an important individual within the community who has something to contribute, because they're able to lift their head and look, behold, and perceive. They're able to turn their attention to something or someone, to bring them back into remembrance. This is how you count people. This is how you make people count. Oh my gosh, it's just absolutely just amazing. It's amazing. So I'd like to suggest, coming back to my notes, that it was the act that each individual knew they were being counted. And the half shekel. Now, as you remember, you might recall previously when a census was done, they would bring a half shekel. Okay, so, and the half shekel initiated the process of them being infused with the reality of who they each are in their heavenly selves. Bring them, count them, lift their heads, cause them to see something and to realize that they are great in themselves, and they are perceived by Hashem as being of great importance. Lift your head. See that about yourself because of who you are connected to because you're part of this. You're part of this. You're being counted because you're part of something great, and you're here because you can contribute. And you're connected. So, sorry, I'm getting very excited. So that the reality that they are each sorry. And the half shekel initiated the process of them being infused with the reality of who they each are in their heavenly selves. They were coming into remembrance, and in doing so, lifting their heads to perceive themselves as Hashem perceived them. All of this from a couple of words about a census. This is the delicious thing. What does it mean to count someone? To count someone is to help them to know that they count. They matter. They matter. You're not just someone in the midst of this large collective. Because it's easy to get lost, isn't it? It's easy for us to feel lost in the crowd. But Hashem here is saying, He desires a great company. He desires all of humanity, but every single one of us matters. Every single one of us counts. And how does he teach us? How does he teach people who come into places of leadership to infuse into every single individual self-worth? Lift their heads. Bring them to the place where they can learn and remember and be infused with the reality that there is a heavenly divine part that exists of them, and that they are actually connected to that. And this is wonderful as well, because the Rambam points out in his commentary on this that they shall each tell their names when being counted, and that the count is for their sake. And so, and this is amazing as well. So Moshe Rabbeinu, everybody knows Moshe's name, but you know what? Because of the way Moshe and Aharon were instructed to do this, they knew everybody's name as well. That's amazing. I mean, there's something happens in the heart of people when they just see themselves as, a common person. Who am I? I'm nobody. And here's this person, that's famous or important or something like this. And then that important person turns around and speaks to them and addresses them using their name. And we're like, know my name. They know my name. How amazing is that? The importance that you feel internally when you realize they know my name. I count who I am. I'm not just, a faceless person in the crowd. No, I'm not. I'm someone who is important to how everything works. And I think this is just, again, amazing. I think it's amazing when we realize this, the way the commentators talk about this, and what it does to us on an individual level. Again, what happens? We start to believe in our potential because of the way God sees us. And if we can do that, if we can realize our potential and see our potential according to his the way God sees us, then we can start to actualize that potential. And that, I mean, to me, this is the heart of what it means to walk in the blessings of God. Well, it's just wonderful, wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Now, there's something else I just wanted to really point out as well that's going on in this parsha. And just want to sort of quickly delve into it. And that is this remarkable thing here, the four formations. And that we're going to come back to this again at other times, but I just wanted to quickly point this out to you and let you see what is going on in regards to what happens around the Mishkan. So the tribes, the families are they're all placed around the Mishkan in a very purpose order, and there's a number of things going on as well in regards to how the Mishkan travels. And so everybody has a part to play. And so in the middle here, we've got, this is the tabernacle, the Mishkan. And there's the outer court and the Mishkan wall. And so the detail here means something, and this is why I'm just going to quickly point it out to you. So the way it faces, so the west, east, south, and that. And so we've got Moshe and Aaron. They are here at the entrance. So this is the front entrance to the Mishkan. Here's the Holy of Holies in here, the Kadosh Kodashim. And then everybody, again, because we're in the Book of Numbers, the Book of Bamidbar, so everything is counted. So everything is counted according to the ages of 20 and up. So there's a lot more people here than is actually being represented. But the relationships that each of the tribes had as well, one to another, there are amazing things to learn there as well. So I've got here, so these are the Levites that are camped around the Mishkan. According to the sons of Levi, so Gershon, Kohat, Merari, and then of course Moshe and Aharon are here by themselves. So they are the children of Merari. And I mean, interesting things are going to happen in the Book of Numbers. I won't spoil it, but it's because of certain things here. There's a very interesting rebellion that starts because of Moshe and Aaron being brothers and where they come from. But anyway, so each of, as you'll see around here as well, every grouping of the tribes, one tribe is assigned leadership over that group. So here we have Yehuda with Yisachar and Zebulun. Reuven here, of course, is the head of this group over here with Shimon and Gad. Then Ephraim with Manasseh and Benjamin, and then Dan here with Naphtali and Asher. And you can see the numbers as well of that were counted in each of the tribes. And then I've got here the total number. Now, if you're asking yourself what is going on with the numbers here, okay, now we'll get to the greater detail of that later on in the next parshas. But when the Mishkan needed to be moved, okay, it was packed up in a very specific order, and the tribes themselves set out in a very specific order as well. So the tribe of Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zebulun here, they would go first. So they would go ahead of the Mishkan, followed by Reuven, Shimon, and Gad, and then the Mishkan would follow after them, and then coming up behind them, Ephraim and Asher, and then finally Naphtali, Asher, and Dan. And Dan would be the last tribe to leave as well, because they had a very important role to play. So Rambam comments on this phrase here, Ish al diglo be'otot, which literally translates as each man. So this is from chapter 2, verse 2. So each man according to, or the banner or the division or the sign, each man by his division according to his emblems. So every tribe had its own flag. That's right, they had its own flag, and on that flag was a picture, and it was a particular color. So, for instance, here Reuven, his flag was red, and it had on it a duodim. So, if you recall, you go back into the very interesting family dynamics that were going on when Yaakov was still at his uncle's house. Reuven finds this particular root that's in the ground. And they translate it as mandrake in the English, but of course in the Hebrew it's duodim. And so it's said to have some sort of interesting qualities that will enhance your ability to give birth and stuff like this, or get pregnant, I should say. And then there's this interesting, very interesting discussion happens between Rachel and Leah, and Rachel basically says, give me the duodim, because she hasn't had any children yet, okay? And give me your son's duodim, and because of that, the next night you can have with Yaakov. Anyway, go and read it. It's all very interesting. But, so starting with Rashi, every division shall have a coloured flag hanging for it, the colour of this division's flag, unlike the colour of the other division's flag. So the colour of each flag is like the colour of the tribe's stone that is fixed onto the choshen, so that's the breastplate. And as a result of this, every individual can recognize his division. So even Ezra, as quoted by the Rambam, points out that the main banner of each grouping displayed the following symbols for the leading tribe. So Reuven was a duodim, which was a figure of a man. Yehuda was a lion. Ephraim was an ox. Dan an eagle. And this, of course, resembled the vision of the cherubim that Yechezkel had of the divine chariot. Now, just as quickly to point out as well, there is this very interesting relationship between the tribes. And what we can see here, and this is something that Rambam talks about in his commentary as well. So the east. So on the east where we had Yehuda, Issachar, and Zebulun. So from where light goes out into the world. So Yehuda has the trait of royalty, Issachar the trait of Torah scholarship, and Zebulun the trait of wealth. Now there's some amazing things to be talked about in regards to those relationship, especially between Issachar and Zebulun. Well, I don't have time to go into them right now, but there's amazing stuff going on there as well. So to the south, we have from the south, from where blessed dew and rain goes out to the world. So there are traits within the tribes themselves, carried a trait, a characteristic, an attribute that contributed to the collective. That's what I'm trying to say here. So Reuven, the trait of repentance. Gad, the trait of might. And Gad was very interesting. So they historically talks about their ability in battle, and they were able to use two swords. They were just pretty brutal, really, really brutal. They could do a lot of damage when they turned up. So again, Gad, the trait of might, and Shimon, which is in the middle, is the trait of atonement. Now, interestingly, I couldn't find anything about the west with Ephraim, which contains the stores of snow, hail, cold, and heat. So I wasn't able to find the attributes for those yet. Still on the lookout for that as well. But then to the north, from where darkness goes out into the world. No, Dan, to judge and return that which is lost. Asher, to illuminate the darkness. And Naphtali, the trait of blessing. So all very interesting things, and really a great discussion point as well. And as I said, we're going to delve into with great detail into what was going on in regards to the movement of the whole camp because of the formation and all those things when we start talking about the Levim and the Kohanim and what they were doing with the Mishkan as well. But anyway, how wonderful is his Torah to us, and amazing things going on here in the beginning of the Book of Bamidbar. So as David HaMelech puts it so wonderfully, unveil my eyes to see the wonders contained within your Torah. Shalom, shalom.